Hey, what's up, fam? It's the Bro Capitalist coming at you about 5 days before the release of The Last of Us, I guess, the HBO miniseries based off of The Last of Us video game. And I wanted to come on here and make a few predictions. If you've been around the channel, you know that I've made several videos about this video game and its second version, like The Last of Us Part 2. So we have the miniseries coming out, and unfortunately, I can't say I'm excited about it, but I do want to take this opportunity to make a prediction about it. So I'm gonna give it a little review. I'll try and be brief about The Last of Us Part 1 video game, Part 2, and my predictions for this miniseries. Try and do this as quick as I can. So, Last of Us Part 1 came out in 2012. I've been saying since then that it's the greatest game ever made. I've been playing video games since Pong, right? Atari, Sega, up to PS4 and PS5. Never really gotten the Xbox, sorry. But what made it so great, in my opinion, was objectively speaking, in 2012, it had the best graphics out there. The gameplay is subjective, so I'll say for me, the gameplay was awesome. You just roll right through the game. There was no stupid puzzles you got stuck on. But what made The Last of Us Part 1 a game changer, in my opinion, I was expecting that this game would just revolutionize entertainment, period, was the story. I played that game too many times to be comfortable sharing with people, but I've played it enough where I've had grown adults sit next to me watching me play that game. In the first 10 minutes, grown adults like in their 40s, in their 30s, 20s. And after that first 10 minutes, you guys who played the game know what I'm talking about. I mean, you get teary-eyed. Like, can you imagine that? Can you imagine playing Spider-Man or Call of Duty or, like, I don't know, Star Wars video games and people coming across teary-eyed? But this game had it, man. The story was amazing. The story is what made The Last of Us, it put it in its own category, in my opinion. Right? You got video games and you had The Last of Us. And that still holds true for me, in my opinion. Now, with that said, let's move on. Oh, hold on. Before we move on, about the story. So the story is about a father and his daughter and his brother experiencing the first day of this apocalypse, a zombie apocalypse, right? Something happens, I ain't gonna give it away just in case you don't know about it, but 10 years later shows up, and now this father and some other woman are smugglers, and they have been given a job to smuggle something from, I think, Boston to Utah. Not really giving away anything here, but what they figured out was they're smuggling a human being from Boston, Utah. And then you go on this adventure with these three. And they encounter, trials and tribulations, they kill zombies and they interact with people. And in that, as they're interacting, is really, I mean, you really get involved in the characters. You really care about what happens to the characters. And they have two characters that are pertinent to this conversation or this monologue. There's a guy, I believe his name is Fred. He's self-reliant. He's a dependable guy, apparently. He got skills. Everything you would want in a human being during the apocalypse, right? But as his time on screen comes to the end, you find out that he lost his partner. So meaning he's gay. And this was back in 2012. And as I found that out, I was like, oh, okay. And kept on going. Right. I mean, it was, to me, it was like, okay, this is the first time I think I've seen something open, like there's an openly gay character in a video game. So that was interesting. But the way it was presented was really, I think, with style, class. It wasn't like psh, psh, he's gay and you better accept him and and you just kept going. There was a black guy, a black older brother and younger brother in there in the game as well, and they did great. You ended up caring about them. You have a black woman who's a leader of this, I guess you would call tribal faction or whatever. So you get the strong black woman or whatever you want trope in there. But none of it was like over the top. You could tell that it was, I believe that The Last of Us was written first. The story was well written first, and then they put a video game to it. Now, The Last of Us, now we're moving on to The Last of Us Part 2. I think they did the opposite. Now, true to the brand, the graphics were great, awesome, probably ahead of its time at the time, which was maybe 3 years ago. The gameplay was phenomenal, easy to get through, great weapons, great maps. The story was utterly ridiculous. And this is why. They threw away the plot line and just stuffed the narrative down your throat. There's no way in the world you will ever convince me that more than two human beings, cognitive human beings who weren't drunk, high, or otherwise incapacitated, read that script and said, you know what? Yeah, this is awesome. This storyline is great. No way you'll ever convince me of that. They just, I believe what happened. I wasn't there. It's just, this is how my brain works. Someone wrote a great script based off the first one, kicked it up a ladder. At the top of that ladder is somebody woke, or some woke organization, some woke shareholder, some organization with a agenda, and they kicked that right back down and said, if you want your money, you got to write your script this way. And the way it came down was basically that story it was just narrative driven. The narrative driven, not narrative. You know what I mean? Woke narrative driven. So in The Last of Us 2, without giving it away, I could almost give it away because I don't care if you ever played it. It was like death to the patriarchy, kill the main character. Yeah, I guess I gave it away. Kill the dad. Like, you don't need fathers. It was all about, did I say that? Okay, just might be getting ahead of myself. In The Last of Us Part 1, sorry. Last of Us Part 1, they had a sub game. So you finish the whole game, and then if you had the DVD or Blu-ray, or if you got the data package, there was a sub game. And in that sub game, it was the same setup. It's an apocalypse, same guns, same gameplay. Everything's the same, except the focus is on the little girl, Ellie, and her affection for this other little girl. So we find out in this shorter gameplay, which is probably like maybe 10 hours, as opposed to the regular game, which is like 60 hours, I guess. The whole point of that thing was to tell you that Ellie's gay. Now, we didn't find that out during the whole 60 hours we were playing the regular game. We found out Fred was gay. But we had no idea this little preteen is supposedly gay, or is gay. We find that out in the sub game, and there ain't no question she's gay. She is gay. They could have just, you ain't even need to make a game out of it. They could have just said she's gay. Look forward to she's a lesbian. Look forward to Last of Us Part 2, right? They basically could have did that. But anyway, now back to The Last of Us Part 2, which is just all woke narrative crap. The game focused on, like, we don't need men. Men are horrible. This is the message that's coming across. Women can do anything, even if they're pregnant. You got all type of weird relationships where you got a lesbian couple raising a baby. Well, okay, so you got a lesbian hooking up with a bisexual woman, and that bisexual woman gets pregnant by a dude, and the dude eventually gets killed. So the bisexual woman and the lesbian got to end up raising this baby. What does this have to do with a video game? Why are we being exposed to this in a video game? Seriously, there's no reason for why. They're coming after your kids. I've been saying that forever. They're coming after your kids, man. They're sexualizing video games, right? There's a transgender child in the game as well. And one of the main characters, one of the main characters, a new character, which becomes one of the main characters, ends up killing an old character that you loved. Like, who writes stuff like this? It's ridiculous. So I did a video on that. You guys can go check that out. But let's get to the main point about part 2 was they had something beautiful in part 1, and it was destroyed for the sake of pushing the narrative on society in part 2. So now HBO has the rights to make a miniseries of part 1. And I'm show you just the first little clip here. I'll show you a preview.
Attention. Citizens are required to carry a red ID health card. Compliance with all state personnel and mandatory.
So why'd you leave Boston? I've been on quite the adventure, little brother.
Why are you so important? Somewhere out west, they're working on a cure.
I reckon it's got something to do with that girl.
It's got everything to do with that little girl.
Got any advice on the best way west?
Go east.
Safe, you can save.
Now, I purposely stopped it twice. And the reason why is because I believe the times it shows the scenes in that sub game of The Last of Us Part 1. Now, remember, The Last of Us Part 1, I believe it's like 60 hours of gameplay. Fact check me, whatever, I don't know. But the sub game is considerably shorter, maybe 10 hours, right? So you got The Last of Us Part 1, the miniseries, and boom, they got, in a minute and 12 seconds, they got 2 scenes from the sub scene. So here's my prediction, which ain't really a prediction, of what's going on with this Last of Us Part 1 for HBO miniseries. They're going to push the hell out of a narrative. They already, in my opinion, you know, Pedro, whatever his name, that recently played Mandalorian, great actor, whatever, but he shouldn't be playing the main character of Joel. There's plenty of cowboy boot wearing white 40-year-old men who can play that character, right? You ain't have to go get Pedro, right? So that's one. The little girl who plays Ellie, she's a great actress. Know her well, know her work well. She doesn't scream Ellie to me at all. So right away, I'm just like, what's going on here? So they're gonna concentrate more so on this narrative of wokeness than the actual story of The Last of Us. And I would really hope I can come on here next week, maybe next Tuesday after I watch it on Sunday, and say, I was totally wrong. You know, they got the message. Go woke, go broke. They steered the ship right, and it's all about The Last of Us Part 1, what that storyline was about. Yes, they showed, you know, representation from the LGBTQ community, the Black community, white community, but it wasn't politicized. It was about a zombie apocalypse with a great relationship between a man, a little girl, and the adventures that they go through. I hope and pray that that becomes reality. But I doubt it. All right, I'm out, y'all. Like, share, and subscribe. Leave a comment below. Another little message. If you hear this long, hopefully you guys can begin to see how socialist Marxists use certain communities, i.e., the urban Black American community, to push their agenda, or they use the LGBTQ community to push their agenda. Members of the LGBTQ community, you wake up. Don't let these Marxists, socialist Marxists, use you guys via weaponized altruism to push their agendas. If you don't know how they do that, it's real simple. Vote for us. We'll protect you. Once they get in office, they don't give a damn about you, and they just push through socialist Marxist agendas. They did it to the Black community, been doing it since at least the 60s. At least the 60s. And they're doing it now with the LGBTQ community. So I just wanted to say that. God bless y'all. Hope you're doing well. Stay healthy, stay safe, and peace. I'm out.